no idols or graven images. That means that there's only God. There aren't any representations of God. There's only God. So I related that brahmacharya to that idea of having no graven images. And then having no other God before me is Ishvara Pranidhana. Only running after your ideal. Only that and no other God. The other ones here are obvious. No stealing, no killing, and no stealing are the same thing. And here's the ones that are sort of interesting. Now, obviously, I'm playing around with this myself here. So, keep the Sabbath. To me, is to establish, to move back to a place where you can come to that pure consciousness again. When you have the whole time where you're involved in the world, and to be able to develop pure consciousness, you need to come to rest. You need to have a special place by which you can do that practice, and the Sabbath allows for that possibility. And then not using the Lord's name in vain is again respecting the true word, respecting the true logos, swadhyaya, in the world. Now, satya, as you will read about it in that link I gave you, is a little bit different from just not lying. It means truly to always speak with the welfare of others in mind, yourself and the others. So that was the example. If someone comes to my house and I hide them, and then the Nazis come, and there was even a big debate about this. There were some people who had this ideal that you should not even lie in those situations, supposedly, or say something false. Well, that is not satya, to reveal that the person's hiding in your house and give them up to the Nazis. That's not satya. Satya is to say, yeah, I saw them go that way. That's satya. And if you think of that thing of not bearing false witness, means to not bear false witness to how God lives in the world. So if I give up someone to the Nazis, I'm bearing false witness. That's not how God dwells in the world, in that relationship. And so it's really having that sense of God or humanity in your speaking, so that you're not speaking out of that, is really more the sense of satya. And then they're just examples of a lack of parigraha. The idea of coveting something that's not yours and taking it is opposed to a parigraha, of course. So the one they have in the scriptures is no adultery. And then coveting is a lack of santosha. So just to give you a picture, now you yourself, out of these four categories, spirituality, justice, cooperation, and socialization, these are, I think the Jama Niyama are pretty strong, but in terms of examples of these. But what you should do is replace these things with specific everyday practices that you might do, in developing your own Nitti. How do I practice these in very practical ways, as opposed to saying that your Nitti is just these broad ideals? So how do I practice brahmacharya in a practical way? How do I do Ishvara Pranidhana practically in my life? How do I practice ahimsa and asteya? It could be, you could say the practice of ahimsa and asteya can be recycled as a practice, So you can come with practical examples of how you're living this Nitti, as opposed to holding the broad ideals every day.
Quick question. I know you were playing with the Ten Commandments here, but are these Hindu concepts, are they actually aligned with the Yama and Niyama?
Yes, those are the Yama ones across the top, and the Niyama ones across the bottom, yes. So, that's really this element of Nitti, of course, a long time ago, this element of Nitti achieves very much a lot of things that the physical yoga does, and people should practice this for years and years and years, trying to really internalize. And by practicing this, people were released from these energies and began to have revelations, out of the practice of of Nitti. Nitti really meaning the experience of what is not God, and in that experience of what is not God, God is revealed. They never. And that's interesting that in Eastern tradition, it's always you can know in the world what's not God. What is God is always a revelation. You know, I don't come to an understanding of what is God. In a sense, they have that idea you can't, God, you receive revelation. What you can know is what is not God in the world. You can't know what is God in the world, but then you're encompassing God, you know, in the finite. So you get a revelation by recognizing what is not God. So you always practice Nitti, the Gyan, which is the yoga of understanding, of knowledge, is always done through Nitti, knowing what's not God. There's a trap in that. They always say that the Gyan cannot achieve ultimate salvation. That the Gyan, through knowledge, can come to a place where there's a dimensionless film between them and God, which is impenetrable. It is only through devotion that you can attain God. And so, you know, there's three broad practices in yoga: Gyan, Bhakti, and Karma. People familiar with those a little bit? Karma yogi, Bhakti yoga, Jnana yogi. So Jnana is the yoga of knowledge. Bhakti is the yoga of devotion. Karma is the yoga of work through acts. So through acts, through love and devotion, through knowledge are the three paths toward achieving union. And really, your practice should be a combination of those. But there are traditionally simply Jnana paths. And they will say that
even though if you read to the end of the book it says you stop a little bit short of why would you want to go down that path?
Because we have no control, because we've been conditioned, we have prejudice. I mean, I'm not typically Gyan, you know, I understand that it's not going to happen that way, but I would love to be an innovation where Jnana practice would work. So I'm not looking for innovation where I don't have to do devotional practice, you know. Somebody like Microsoft might come up with it. You know, go to Gyan path, you know. But they say that really the only single path you can is Bhakti, and they call Bhakti Setu, which means bridge, and it means that through Bhakti you will actually find yourself working karma and working the knowledge path through Bhakti.
And so, Bhakti.
Bhakti. I'm going to digress a lot, but digress just a little bit because this word karma is so misunderstood among people. Karma means action. It means action. And how karma works, but there's another principle, and it's called sanskara. And sanskara is the more important principle, and it's the principle that's not understood. Whenever you do an action, there's a reaction. Depending on that, unless that action is done out of your pure relationship with God. When you have that reaction, it creates what is called a sanskara that is stored in the anahata chakra. Then you must, in the future, manifest that reaction as an action. That's what karma is. Karma says that you are bound to certain actions in the future because you have samskara. So understand, I think we use to mix them up. People think karma is actually samskara. Samskara is the reaction that you hold in your being due to an action that wasn't done in a pure way. That then binds you to a future action to work through that in the future. That's karma. The fact that you have to work through all those reactions. And so the whole thing about yoga is about coming to a place where you can act in the world without reaction, without building up samskara, and then eventually you exhaust your karma. You exhaust your karma because you don't build up new samskaras. And you eventually then are finished.
Now, was samskara what you were referring to when you said when you pray for things specifically, you create
a mental reaction, which is a samskara. For every samskara, there's a potential karmic action in the future that you have to work through every samskara.
Karma is like a law, a physical law, almost.
Right.
It's one of the rules of the game.
Exactly.
It's one of the built-in
for every action
that we.
Because that's one of the Newton's three fundamental laws. For every action, there's a reaction. So for every action, mental, spiritual, physical action, there's a reaction. That reaction then has to unfold in the future, which creates karma. Unless we have questions about this short, I want to move to this principle of the hierarchy of will and sin and grace. So the task would be to then, to make very practical a code of spiritual necessity for yourself. And going into that principle of spiritual necessity, what I mean is that to dwell in the realm of spirit, there's certain activity required. And that activity, in a sense, is the morality that you bring to your life. To dwell in the realm of matter, there's also material necessity, and you have to be doing certain actions to maintain the material world. And so you have these poles which are always pulling on you. Now, Steiner, has this very, well, you have the chart there. I mean, I think one of the more useful things that Steiner has given in Study of Man is this hierarchy of will. Because it really can give a clear description of kind of the mental, emotional, and thought actions that really compose your being in the world. I mean, you have instinct. That's a level of physical condition that leads to a certain set of actions. Then you have drives, such as hunger, and the drive to reproduce. These drives are there, and they're in the etheric body, not the physical body. And those then are the foundation for another set of actions and thoughts. Steiner's clear to say that what happens is that when you hold back from an instinctual thing, then the drive emerges. In a sense, what you have is a certain amount of potentiality that every time you hold back, it actually immediately generates the next level of action. So if I hold babies in relationship with the mother and father, move out of instinct into an awareness of their drives, and that depends on what the relationship with the mother and father will be. And they actually learn to hold back to a certain degree from their instinct. What they do is the immature reflexes are instinctual. They learn to modify those immature reflexes to better meet their drives. They get if I really want to get fed, wait till my mom walks by the bed and then cry. They don't think about it, but they learn to hold back these immature instinctual reflexes in ways that are more productive to getting their drives met. And then they learn to hold back their drives, because I don't want that formula you give me. I want breast milk. That's a desire. Sure, I can get my hunger met, but I prefer breast milk than the formula. And so, you learn in life to sort of behave in a certain way to hold back from just getting the drive met, to getting the desire met, which is like, I like this kind of food, or I like this way of playing. I like my eggs dyed green, that's a desire, not a drive. The drive is hunger. The desire is to have green eggs and ham, as opposed to have just those plain old white ones, And then drive is held back and you move to motive. I go to work out of motive. The motive is that by going to work, then I will have the capacity to get all my desires met, therefore my drives, therefore satisfy everything that's instinctual. It's when you start moving a little bit out of just the immediate until you kind of now hold the impulses back in anticipation of something that's going to come farther in time. You gather these resources, you have motive now. Motive usually is trying to get you something. It gets you a desire. It gets a desire met, but it gets a desire met not by the direct access to the source of the desire, but by some other process and behavior in the world that then allows you other resources to get your desires met. Now, motive is the level of human existence. That's the ego emerges in the level of motive. Now, you can see I have paradise written there with motive. In paradise, human beings only had motive. And that motive